Alright, everybody. Now, I was away, just taking a break from content creation. Whenever a big drama happens, I usually just like to take a break and let the people attacking me hang themselves with their own ropes that they're throwing out there. And they always do, and they have again. But while I was away, there was some drama outside of the lefty political sphere that happened that has a very strong political implication. You may be aware of Moist Critikal. If you spend any time on the internet at all, he is very familiar. He's in memes. His videos are everywhere. He's one of the biggest YouTubers out there. He's actually also a very big streamer on Twitch as well. And I think generally he's a pretty good guy who has some pretty good reasoning. He's had some takes in the past that I have visibly cringed at, and I've called them out in the past. It's not even necessarily just because he tends to be a bit of a fence-sitter centrist on some pretty important issues on politics. That's actually not my biggest issue with him. My biggest gripe with him is that one time he was talking about lolicon and said he doesn't care if people are jacking it to drawn CP. And I get what he meant by that, as like, it's not hurting anyone when people do that, so it doesn't bother him as much as when people are hurting actual children. I'm pretty sure that's what he meant, but the way he worded that absolutely empowered the lolicons and pedos that watch him, no doubt. I mean, he's a huge YouTuber. There are pedophiles in that audience. So it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, that line. That sort of like soft normalization of lolicon stuff. That's my biggest issue with Critikal. But on top of that, what he's most known for, and possibly my biggest praise of him, was his dunking on Sneako a couple years ago. Not just for his bigotry and his other dumbfuck takes he's become famous for, but also for, if you guys don't know, Sneako is famous for going on a rant about how Cuties is his favorite movie. Now, we'll cut through the memes here now that it's a couple years later. Cuties was a movie made by a French woman that was meant to, basically decry the over-sexualization of women in media that has basically bled in even to the childhoods of young women, and how, like, the child pageant industry is horrific as well. The biggest problem with it, though, is that they outright depicted it, and depicted it with child actors, and so people just... It's the pedophile movie. That is what it'll always be known as. Sorry to the lady who was trying to send a good message when she made that, but you did it not well. And because of that, when Sneako went on his rant, which I don't even know if that was him just going on, like, a pedophilia admission rant. I doubt that was even what he was intending to do. I think he was actually trying to argue he agreed with that moral, especially when you consider his whole, like, anti-sexuality for women positions he's so famous for now. But everybody took that as he loves the pedo movie. And so, of course, Critikal jumped on him for that. You know, dropped the hammer on him hilariously. And I think everybody agrees, even if it's not a 100% accurate criticism of Sneako, it's still hilarious. On top of that, yeah, Sneako does advocate for child marriage now because he's like a pseudo-fake Muslim or whatever. He's done his, like, fake Muslim arc. So now he's, like, doing... He won't actually advocate for child marriage. He's too much of a pussy to do it, but he does. Like, when he's questioned about, like, the Prophet Muhammad and Aisha... I believe was like the 8 or 9-year-old girl that he supposedly married. I don't know a lot about this, but Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile. When he gets questioned about that, he gets really nervous, and he's too much of a pussy to own that the prophet of his religion is a pedophile, and part of, like, the religion is, like, the promising of underage, like, virgin girls and all that to the men and all. He won't own it, but he knows it's there, and so... Yeah, it's pretty reasonable, I think, to go after Sneako from the whole, like, pedo angle, I guess. And I think Critikal did a good job at that a couple years ago, but unfortunately, Critikal apparently recently got steamrolled by Sneako in a debate. Now, to be fair, I have not seen any of this debate whatsoever, and I'm hearing different opinions on how Critikal did from different sources. The broadest consensus seems to be that Sneako steamrolled Critikal, while a lot of people on the left seem to have the consensus that Critikal held his own quite well. and others that are more like in the middle, I've heard, have like a sympathetic position towards Critical's arguments, but think he argued them badly. So from the impression I've gotten, Critikal did not do well here. Maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is there is a possible explanation for why people think Critikal did badly here, because this is one thing I've heard about it. Apparently, Charlie outright says that underaged individuals with gender dysphoria should be allowed to medically transition, presumably like with the doctor's guidance, permission, and, you know, with them doing the process, right? Not just like the parent or the kid just deciding, I'm going to go transition. And that position may be the correct one, but it is also the overwhelmingly unpopular one online, especially in like normie gaming spaces. So it's possible everyone thinks that Critikal lost this debate simply because he said that gender dysphoric youth should be allowed to transition medically. Like I can see a reality where Charlie saying that lost him the debate in the eyes of the normies and in the general public. Now, this is apparently a 2.5 hour long debate, so we can't watch the whole thing, but I definitely want to skim it. And in about 30 minutes, Kamala Harris should be doing a live speaking event, so we'll have to wrap up around when that starts so we can see that. So keep an eye on that in chat if you would, by the way, because keeping me updated on when that's starting and how long out we are from that is very helpful, if you would be so kind. And yeah, let's go ahead and check this out. I have not seen any of this debate yet. The most I've seen of it is people talking about it. And they've been so vague that I couldn't really glean much. So let's watch. Moist Critikal versus Sneako. Full debate.
Physically mature. Again, it depends on the person.
That's just, you see why that's such an, I don't know why I don't see why that's such an issue. Like Predators, that Chris Hansen sat down and said the same thing.
Right,
this 13-year-old is physically mature.
But you see, this issue, in my worldview, everything looks good, sounds good.
Yeah, no, it's all good on my end over here. Yeah, you sound fine. Video looks good.
I gotta make sure you're, I don't have headphones because it is what it is.
Why the PewDiePie background?
No, you're good.
You know, I met somebody that that knows you when I went to do the Jinxie podcast.
Oh yeah, at Jinxie's place?
No, at Panera Bread. At Panera Bread. Luckily, I mean, I'm not saying this to like be a dick, but he was like,
all right, I don't care.
Yo, I'm a fan of you. He's like,
I like Critikal, and I like when he banters in small talks, but not with Sneako.
You just explain it.
When's it become a debate? Is this where it becomes a debate?
Most people know what that is.
They're like, what's your YouTube? And they're like searching it up.
You're not a 19-year-old, right? So why would you be arguing for like a 16, you know?
First off, I'm not arguing to lower the age of consent. I don't believe in the age of consent.
Okay, all right, this is where it gets real.
Now you're outside. I feel like 18 is a
and I want to first add
what's going on here.
But yeah, so let's talk about what we came to talk about.
Yeah, man. So with all of what's going on here, why are you so insistent on like the age of consent being like unreasonable? Or at least that's the impression I and most people gather from.
How's the volume, by the way? Am I too loud? Is this too quiet, too loud? There's like a weird audio thing happening here. I don't know if like Charlie and Sneako had their audio fucked or they were in echoey rooms for this one or something. But on my end, it's a little funky, but it's good. So I just want to know if it's good on your end, chat. Vid's a little too soft. I'll turn it up a little more, and I'll try not to talk while it's playing, you know? All right, let's do this.
From the way you speak about it.
That's a valid question, and I want to first ask, like, what's your issue with my opinion on the age of consent, age of marriage?
Because I feel like age of consent should just be an accepted number, and I think the accepted one is 18. Like, regardless of where you talk about in the world, I feel like once you start talking about someone under...
I feel like Critikal's going at it from, like, not the best path here. I think what I would ask Sneako in this situation is, why are you so interested in having conversations about the age of consent? Because I think to me and to most normal people, this makes you look really creepy and indicates a possible insidious motivation. I feel like that's what I would say. I would essentially lead the question a little with the whole, why are you so obsessed with talking about the age of consent, Sneako? And essentially force him into hanging himself with his own rope. I think that'd be probably the best way to handle this from the start.
Under 18, you're basically just talking like a predator. Like I feel like 18 is a pretty well-established number for most sensible people. At 18, you're going to college, you're living your own life now, you're outside of your family nest. Anything under that, you're still a kid.
Okay. It's not 18 in most of the United States.
So what he's probably going to argue is like a bunch of other like standards we have that could risk your life and that that are younger than 18, right? So I'm pretty sure he's going to say that in many states you can drive at 15 or 16 years old, and you could get into an accident, you could hurt someone else or yourself. We trust that. Like, he's going to start bringing up a bunch of unrelated things. Probably the best way to defend our current laws around the age of consent is outright saying the laws themselves are not the moral guide. They aren't. The laws themselves exist as a pretty strong standard of legality that helps prevent the overwhelming majority of cases in which one who has a power dynamic over another party is able to use it to abuse the other. The problem is those laws existing doesn't stop it. It doesn't cover every situation. And 18 might not even be an ideal age of consent. I can guarantee you there are plenty of people out there that even at 18 years old are probably not quite mature enough to be having sex. And we've even got courts that are designed to decide this, where I know that in the case of like certain court decisions, it can be decided that a full-grown adult is of a mental capacity in which they cannot consent to sexual anything, right? Particularly if they have a disability, right? Xbox record that. Record me saying something true and based. And so the number 18, if Sneako wants to like argue about it, sure, it may not be the most perfect number, but I think most people agree that it's an acceptable enough number for the law, and if any further abuses take place, then it should be up to the courts and local authorities on a case-by-case basis to enforce the law in its spirit, right? And so Sneako's going to try to bring up a bunch of like certain what-if case scenarios and like try to poke holes in it to try and sound like he's just attacking it from a logical perspective. But at the end of the day, Sneako, I would be more surprised if there was like a blood test that came out that showed Sneako is 100% not a pedophile than if one came out proving that he was. I would be more surprised if he wasn't. I'm not saying I think he is. I'm saying I would be more surprised if he provably wasn't.
States where we both live, right?
Yeah, but that refers to like Romeo and Juliet laws where if you're like 19 and with a 16-year-old, it's not technically illegal, but you're not a 19-year-old, right? So why would you be arguing for like a 16,
Well, first off, I'm not arguing to lower the age of consent. I don't believe in the age of consent. We can get there. I want to establish some terms first.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not even just with Romeo and Juliet laws. There's a lot of...
This debate infuriates me because nearly the entire internet has agreed that the pedophile defending child marriage won the debate and the normal guy defending trans rights lost. So that's my big question. Like, does Charlie just argue badly here? Or is it literally just that the internet's consensus is that, like, you believing in child marriage is less problematic than you believing in trans rights? Because the internet does believe you're literally worse than Sneako if you believe kids should be allowed to transition. Like, you can get clipped just saying that and have 100,000 people on Twitter calling you a pedophile. I don't think it's the latter at all, Zan. So, like, does Charlie just do a bad job here? We'll have to watch and see.
States where it's 16 regardless of Romeo and Juliet. And then you go to Europe, most countries are 16. Japan, I think they just changed it. It was like 13 or 14, and now it's 16. Brazil, it's...
I don't think you should mention that they recently changed it to be older in Japan. So he's trying to say, like, oh, it's different in other places because the culture, yada, yada. It is different in other places because some places have outright degenerate laws. I'll just outright say it. In Europe and in Japan up until like recently, where like the age of consent is 16 and like 13 whatnot, that's bullshit. That's degenerate bullshit. The law does not align with what I think the majority of people would agree it should morally. I think that even on the internet, most Europeans apply the American standard for the age of consent Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but have you ever seen during a drama when like an 18 and like 16-year-old are texting inappropriately and like the 18-year-old is like doing some groomery shit? Do you ever see Europeans saying, yeah, well, it's legal here in Europe? Even if the drama, even if it happened in Europe, you don't see Europeans online arguing it's okay because the law there is that I always see Europeans online applying the same standard. Like I see British people apply the standard of who is and isn't a nonce, as they would say, equally the same as the American law standard, 18 years old. Even though that's not the law in like Europe, all around Europe, and I believe in the UK. So yeah, even the people who live under these laws, at least online, seem to believe that 16 is too young, and certainly believe that 13, 14 is too young.
14. I saw that from a Nelk Boys video. They were joking around about how they should, like, when in Rome, they're in Brazil, so they might as well sleep with a 14-year-old, right? Or across the world, 18. I want to see, like, why do you think...
Nonce is British slang for pedophile. I always I'd hear it sometimes, and it was weird that I never connected that it was being used in the context of, like, a guy being a creep around kids. But I always thought it was just a British word for someone being an idiot, like, oh, you fucking nonce. But it means, like, a kitty diddler, chomo. It's like the British word for chomo. You might hear, like, I bet it's, like, prison slang. Like, oi.
Yeah, Jacob. In cell block C. Looked up his papers. Turns out he's a nonce. Was touching them kids.
You know, like, that's probably where it comes from. Yeah, bellend is also British slang for idiot. Yeah, I don't know. It sounded like a British slang for idiot, but it turns out it's British slang for pedophile. I assume it's like British chomo, though. That's my assumption, at least.
18 is the age of consent.
Sounds like prison slang, yeah.
Because that right now is the one that makes the most sense. I guess to piggyback off what you're saying, so if you're traveling right now, if you go to Europe, are you going to be comfortable?
Zan, I don't know if you'll make it to the point because of time restraints or constraints. Do you want me to tell you what point caused the controversy? Yeah, I'm actually fine with that. We've seen the opening. Let's skip to the point that causes the controversy, because we do want to see Kamala's speech in a bit. It is British prison slang. Nice. Zan never misses. I literally guessed that, too. That it was, like, the British chomo. Nice. I just know all... I know all things, chat. I just pull the truth out of my ass without even trying. It's crazy. Did you hear that Tim Walz is the VP pick for Kamala? Yeah, I did. We're going to be covering that today. Pepper T21, what's the timestamp? You're leaving me hanging. You're leaving me hanging, Pepper T21. No, why would you offer before you know? No. All right. Well, we got to resume. We've waited too long.
Hooking up with a 16-year-old?
I don't have a timestamp, but if you scroll to where they talk about trans people, Charlie says, how would I know where they talk of... Dog, what? Never do that again, Pepper T21. Never do what you just did in my chat ever again. Never say... Would you like to would you like a timestamp? Would you like to skip to the point that caused... Would you like me to tell you what point caused the controversy and then tell me, skip to the part where they talk about trans rights? Search the transcript. That's been removed from YouTube, Slashy. That was removed from YouTube a year ago, dog. Don't you remember the controversy on Twitter over it? They removed that shit. You think Google allows good features on YouTube to stay around? Listen, we're going to resume and we're going to watch it and get as far as we can, I'm afraid. You'll have to find the timestamp, because I'm not skimming this till I find where they're talking about trans people. I will do it for you. Then what? Then just do it and put the timestamp in. What? Do you want to just sit here and watch me search for the transcript? Guys, you're the chat. This is your job.
Like, just because it's legal there, would that make you feel comfortable?
Your job is to give me the links. My job is to react, not to sit here quiet. This is what would have happened if I had to search the transcript. I'd just be like... And it'd be that for like 30 seconds to a minute, you know? Come on, guys. My job's to be entertaining, not to do tech shit. If you guys want me to skip to a point, you gotta send me that timestamp. Come on. Come on.
No, I don't hook up
Get
anymore.
with the program.
I'm not saying that you do, but I'm saying if you were, single and looking for someone, would you feel comfortable with it being a 16-year-old if it's in Europe versus US?
I wouldn't do that. Like, I would not have sex before. I think sex, like, out of wedlock altogether is something that we should not encourage anymore. And having the age of consent, having that idea encourages people to have premarital sex, right? It just...
Yeah, he's doing the whole, like, conservative brand of pedophilia defense. The idea that, like, you want your wife to be unspoilt and have to have a low body count, and so you must marry a child. It's like, it's the conservative dude bro red pillars line of pedophilia defense. It's very straightforward. They believe that, like, women are objects. They get worn out the older and more sexually active they are, and naturally they arrive at the conclusion that the most valuable sexual object is a child. They are disgusting people, and this is the natural endpoint of the red pill movement, and it's why we don't regard those red pill types with much respect around here.
Just that term, age of consent, means you're consenting to something that we shouldn't be doing. So no, I
have
wouldn't
the
feel comfortable doing
timestamp.
that.
Drop that shit.
Okay,
Slashy.
so then instead of let's take it away from like premarital sex, would you feel comfortable marrying a 16-year-old? Like, would you meet a 16-year-old with romantic intent if you're in Europe and maybe marry a 16-year-old? Nothing
wouldn't.
sexual.
I probably wouldn't personally, because I don't think that I'd be on the same mental playing field. I like to have intellectual conversations. I like to be with women that are around my same age, because then I can have conversations. I like to.
Yeah, hit up Ethan for that, Slashy. Or Balth. Thank you. I appreciate that. Here, let's hear his answer to this question, and then we'll skip to the timestamp for when the trans stuff starts.
To relate to them, I think there'd be too much of a gap. But other people, like, if they're able to get along, then I don't see why that's so much of a problem.
But why don't you see that as a problem? So for you, you're recognizing, like, this person's much younger than me. It is a kid. Like, you are talking to.
Okay, so let's define these terms.
Let's in high school.
Before we even get into, let's define these terms before we even get into this conversation. What is a child?
I would use the age of consent under.
I cannot believe he said the line that everybody did the Matt Walsh documentary for. Like, who remembers when Matt Walsh put out the documentary, What is a Woman, and everyone made the parody posters that are him saying, what is a child? He just said the line. He just said the conservative pedophile line. That's fucking crazy. He said the line. He said it. Holy crap. I guess that's his answer. His answer is asking in response, what is a child? Good God. That is the most pedophilic answer. Like, can we all agree, by the way, that responding to the question, would you date a 16-year-old with what is a child, is the most pedophilic answer he could have responded with? Like, he could have outright said yes, and it would be less pedophilic than his response. Yeah, Matt Walsh. Anyway.
World and process.
Okay, so apparently we're about to get to the trans bit that caused the controversy and got Critikal into drama.
It's up in here.
Okay, 10 years ago, did you believe that a child can go through transgender therapy? Can they cut their penis off?
10 years ago, I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't unaware of it, and then when I learned about it, I formed my own morality on it based on everything I saw, read, came to my own conclusions.
Just respond. Can a child get their appendix taken out? Can a child get a heart transplant? Can a child get their tonsils removed? Can the child get their wisdom teeth removed? Like, you can say get their dick chopped off if that's what you want to say, but that's not... You're just making it sound gross to try and evoke an emotional response in people. The fact is, this is a medical procedure advised and done by medical professionals with the backing and consensus and medical knowledge gained from the entirety of the medical community. This isn't just like a thing, like some cosmetic surgery thing you walk in and you get your nose job type deal. This takes years and years and years and years of going through a process. And the whole, like, children transitioning thing is so rare for so many reasons, most notably that this process is so long that you're likely to not be a kid anymore by the time you get to the point where you're able to be cleared for medical transition, at least in America, right? So it's so rare, and it's such a wedge case that these people are trying to, like, fearmonger about. But even in those wedge cases, they are, like, against the scientific and medical consensus. Like, to be very clear here, being against trans youth being able to medically transition is the equivalent of being, like, in favor of those families that don't let their kids get like treatment for cancer or even curable diseases because it's against their religious beliefs. So they don't allow their kids to get the treatment. Like, you are on par with the people who defend that. If you defend like withholding gender dysphoric youth from treatment, just because it sounds weird to allow it because they're young in your mind. It is a medical treatment. It is one backed up by the medical and scientific community, and you are anti-science and medicine if you've got a problem with it, just as much as like Jehovah's Witnesses not letting their kid get a blood transfusion and letting them die.
Okay. If I told you when you were a kid that it was okay legally and morally to cut your dick off.
Yeah, of course. Like, they don't even know enough about the process to know that it's not chopping a dick off, by the way. Yeah, the actual process for a vaginoplasty is like kind of like inverting. Like, it's like my understanding of it is like taking a hot dog, cutting it four ways diagonally, and then inverting it. I might be wrong there, but that's my general understanding of the start of the process. I've had it like described in not very great detail before. So it's not even a chopping off of anything because you don't lose any flesh mass, from my understanding. The dick becomes a vagine. Exactly, Balth. It becomes a vagina. And so, like, they're so stupid. They just have to describe it in the most simplistic and gross out way possible because they have no arguments. These transphobe types, they just don't.
Would you agree?
Like, what do you mean? Would I do it, or would I say that that's okay?
Would you say that that's okay?
I'd have no idea on how to even process something like that. I'm a fucking child.
How old are you now?
29.
Okay. When you were 10 years ago, like, and you had heard about, because this was still bubbling. There was I think Caitlyn Jenner was first popping up. This was like the talk of the town. If I told you 10 years ago, try to remember that Trump.
Dude, Sneako is one of those people, by the way, who thinks that LGBT, as he would say, started in 2015. Like, he and his fans, like, he doesn't believe it, I think. I think he's pretending to be that stupid. But he's got an audience of very young kids, you gotta remember. Like, that one clip where he sees a bunch of his fans in public and they literally, like, their voices aren't even cracking yet. And they're like, we hate women. We hate women. I can't even imitate their voices because I'm post-puberty. They've got, like, that, you could mistake it for a girl prepubescent voice. And it's like, dog, these are little kids screaming about how they hate women and cheering for Sneako. This is representative of probably most of Sneako's audience. So this is a guy who's got an audience of little kids who are all boys advocating for child marriage and pedophilia to that audience, who are then carrying those opinions to their school, to their family, to their friends. God forbid their future first relationships. It's horrifying. It really, really is. But if you're one of those kids who watches Sneako, you'll fall for these arguments because you don't know any better, right? It kind of reminds me, like, reading the comments of, like, Red Pillar Sneako fan types online reminds me a lot of my recent re-listen to Jeff the Killer. You guys know the classic creepypasta? The image predates the story, but the story was written to give a story to the classic, like, go to sleep image. And I listened to Wendigoon and Meat Canyon on Creepcast read like Jeff the Killer. And man, it is so clearly written by a 13-year-old in the, like, year after The Dark Knight came out. Like, it's really I'm 13 and this is deep. It's very, very I'm 13 and this is deep. And when I re-listened to that story and was just cringing at it, I realized that everything about it reminded me of the cadence, grammar, and general thought process of a Sneako fan or an Andrew Tate fan. These, like, 13 to 12-year-old boys who are terminally online with an absolutely no life experience to pull from, so they end up saying the darndest things with their full throat thinking it's real. Like, you see, like, the Andrew Tate fans blaming Joe Biden for Tate getting arrested in Romania. And it's like, dog, you're so clearly 13. You like, even at 15, you would know that, like, different countries have different laws and different, like, police forces and what, like, clear, like, you would be at 15 to 16, you would know that Joe Biden could not possibly be responsible for the Tate brothers being arrested. But that's the kind of things you hear from these guys. Like, they're really catering to a young, low life experience, like pre-first kiss, having like child audience, and they're trying to brainwash them into some really horrific, toxic ideas at like a young age. And you hear these stories from teachers about how it's catching on as well. How many of you guys have read those posts or seen those TikToks from like elementary school teachers talking about how their like first and second grade male students are just saying and doing the most misogynistic shit ever, and they're finding out that they're getting it from like Sneako, Aiden Ross, and Andrew Tate? Like, these are first and second grade boys watching these guys, then going to school and then imitating the behaviors of Andrew Tate at their female teachers. This has been happening a lot, and it's fucked, dude. Like, it's really fucked.
Trump was running for president, 2014. What's happened? Like, Obama's still in office, right? I tell you it's okay to cut kids' penises off. You saying that's cool?
So 10 years ago?
Yeah.
I'd say let me look into it, and probably if it's a decision they came to with professionals and their family, I'd say yeah. I'd say you have the right to make that decision for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll make the internet like want to burn Critikal at the stake. Critikal is kind of like, in more ways than one, the Keanu Reeves of the internet, where he can do no wrong. But something you'll find is always the case for these like beloved they can do no wrong content creators is the second they express a progressive opinion that's like actually progressive for the time, like more than half their audience and the entire internet is down their throat. Like they are no longer the untouchable like god they once were. Like, Critikal is apparently getting tons of shit right now, like more than he's ever gotten before from any drama ever, because he dared to be like pro trans kids, which is a very unpopular opinion online, right? Like, if you guys remember, like the right now, kids transitioning is the current non-binary. If you'll remember, back in like 2016, 2017, the internet was broadly pretty much fully in favor, I would say, like broadly, of like binary trans people who pass and are like Blair White, you know? It was non-binary people who were seen as like the totally fake made-up thing. We have to stop this whole non-binary thing. It's crazy, right? That was a big thing in 2016 to 2017. And then everyone kind of slowly figured out like, oh shit, that's not a thing. Like, non-binary people are real, and we were actually assholes there. Like, people realize that, but now we've moved on to the like trans kids topic, and I guarantee you in 3 to 5 years, people are going to look back at the time when everyone was freaking out and calling each other pedophiles for supporting like trans kids. They're going to look back at these times as the same as when they said non-binary people are fake and not real back in 2016. Keanu is a Zionist, though. I don't care, dude. I don't care.
Can you? I don't even know how to get through to like the people like you sometimes. Why? Because why is it okay? Why? Okay, I'm not trying to be. Why do you think a kid can consent to that, but they can't consent to marriage? Why can a kid consent?
We're going in circles. I just said when it comes to a marriage, it's no longer just a personal decision.
Zan, please destroy Sneako in a very one-sided debate, please. Listen, guys, if you ever want me to do one of these big, like, high-tier debates, or to even, like, get a conversation with someone like Critikal, you guys gotta drop support on the channel. That's the way. As the channel grows and I've got more of a platform to speak of and I'm more noticeable in the online space, that's how you get onto these shows, and you get to talk to these people on stream and stuff, and you get to like potentially influence their politics. If you guys want to see me talking to Critikal and you know, left pilling him or whatever, you want to see me talking to Sneako and blowing him the fuck out, then hit that like button. Whether you're watching live or you're watching this when it comes out as a segment, hit the like button, comment, subscribe. It really does help the channel, and I appreciate it. You guys have been doing it a lot lately. That's why there's been so much channel growth.
It's not. You take on a
We've
whole
also established that a
different-
transgender surgery is also not a personal decision.
It is. It is a decision you are making.
You're also saying,
Well, it is, but it's also one that's like backed and presided over by like medical professionals, doctors and psychologists and what have you.
I do to the marriage, which is a personal decision.
and then you are bringing in an entirely new family dynamic from this adult.
And why does that then make it wrong because other people are involved?
Because this is an adult. This is a predator who is coming into your life.
A predator?
Yeah, if you are marrying an adult as a child, that's a predator.
Okay, and it's not predatory.
It really is like stark, I think, the fact that people came out of this thinking Sneako won because they think that Critikal saying, yeah, kids should be able to get like medical transition if doctors and whatnot advise it. They see that as worse than Sneako full-chestedly defending marrying children off to adults. Like, that is how far the pedo-jacketing of the trans community has gone, that they will see a grown man advocating for child marriage and a grown man saying, I think it's okay if kids transition as long as doctors are advising it. And they see the latter as the problem. Like, that is how bad the pedo-jacketing, like, culture war shit has gotten online. It really is, like, we're in another era of that, like, right-wing hysteria, Gamergate type shit. I don't even know what we're gonna call it when we're out of it. Like, the anti-woke era, I guess is what we'll call it. Like, before we had the anti-SJW era or Gamergate, I guess this time around it's the anti-woke era would probably be the best name for it. One of these days, I'll do, like, a 2B2T timeline style thing to lay out, like, the online politics landscape since, like, I got to be knowledgeable of it and maybe some, like, background research to see what things were like prior. Like, to break down the eras of the internet, and particularly YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook and Instagram, the two, like, the biggest social media platforms, and then TikTok when it, came out. Like, if you guys know about the 2B2T timeline, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about here. 2B2T timeline. Like, imagine this, but it's made specifically to outline, like, the big events in the timeline of online politics. So this is 2B2Ts, right? And it's got, like, the year markers, and right now we're in 2024. And they mark, like, what update the server was on, how many players were playing on it, what big factions were active at the time on the server, and then just countless mini events. Like, could you imagine how cool this would be? And this is constantly updated by the 2B2T community every year. So I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it'd be interesting to make one of these, except it's just online politics, right? All hail Queen Pop Bob, indeed. Apparently Pop Bob is actually trans. People keep telling me that. Even, like, the 2B2T community, like, will lambast you if you misgender Pop Bob, and I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. I think it's actually crazy to me that 2B2T, the server that, like, regularly has, like, swastikas and all sorts of, like, slurs getting thrown around, has a more trans-positive culture than the internet broadly. And I think the main reason for that is, and I always kind of saw it coming, was, like, back in 2016 to 2018 when I played 2B2T incessantly, I knew so many people who were, like, there were every faction or clan had a few trans members that, like, they definitely didn't get, like, an easy time in those Discord servers and in those, like, group chats and stuff, but they weren't, like, incessantly bullied or not allowed to play with everyone else because they were trans. And I kind of expected that with that being the norm, and with there being a sizable trans player base on 2B, that inevitably the culture was going to become surprisingly pro-trans despite how generally bigoted people try to be just to exercise the free speech absolutism the server enforces. Anyway, this is a bit of a stun lock, but, I think it's interesting.
Or for the doctor to lure a kid into an office and cut his penis off.
Oh, he's luring kids into the office now?
Yeah,
with,
there's
like,
advertisements. Chris Tyson from, maybe a kid saw your collab with...
Wait, no, like, Critikal's actually arguing pretty well here. It's just that Sneako's on the offensive, while Critikal should probably be on the offensive. But I think it's literally just that Critikal defended trans kids, and the internet has a bigger problem with that than child marriage. right now.
Mr. Beast, he got inspired by Chris Tyson. He gets lured in because Chris Tyson.
Maybe a 24-year-old watched your streams like, oh, you know what? This 15-year-old's pretty mature. I'm going to go ahead and start trying to talk to them. Do you think that's cool?
No, that's not cool. You're supposed to talk to the father before you get married. If her father's not okay with it,
that's the issue you have with that scenario?
Yeah, but when you approach marriage, you don't just go approach a girl and that's not what Islamically is allowed. You're supposed to go to the father and supposed to see where it goes from there. So that's never what I said.
24-year-old.
Dude, guys, has there ever been a more perfect example of how the anti-trans shit has brain rotted the internet? I can't watch anymore because it actually makes me mad. It is just Charlie reasonably defending trans people while Sneako full-throatedly defends child marriage. And the internet's response is just like, yeah, no, I think Charlie was pretty cringe there. Jesus Christ. Did he say that's not Islamically allowed? I think he made that word up, but I think what he means is in Islam, which is what he's pretending to be, is Muslim. He's trying to do the whole, like, red-pilled, harem-having, rich, Gulf state-living, like, fake Muslim convert guy, right? Like, he's moving to Dubai, if I recall correctly, and he's doing the whole fake Muslim thing, and so, yeah, it's basically the new brand. Like, for a while, everyone was taking the Christ pill, you know? Like, all the red pill types were taking the Christ pill, the whole, like, barefoot wife in the kitchen pregnant, like, fantasy. But then they upgraded to Islam because, like, Islam is even more misogynistic and even more, like, power to the man over the woman. And that attracts them, even though simultaneously, many of these people believe in, like, backing Trump with his, like, Muslim country, like, travel bans and shit, and all of his Islamophobia and what have you. So there's no consistency there. It's just the only consistent factors are they gravitate towards politics and religions and worldviews that allow them to justify having absolute power over women who they deem inferior and less. Yeah. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment somehow, I hated this segment, to be honest. I do not like looking at Sneako's face, to be honest. Like, he has a very punchable face, and I feel I can say that because so many people have punched the shit out of it. He's got brain damage and a broken tooth because of it at this point. He's got just such a punchable face, and watching him, like, smugly smile as he defends pedophilia and child marriage, knowing that the internet attacked the guy that he's debating, it's just like, man. It just really does go to show how much transphobia has broken the internet's brain, huh? Like, transphobia is an actual mind virus. Like, talk about the woke mind virus. Nah. This is the transphobia mind virus, and it makes you defend pedophilia, apparently. So don't be transphobic. Otherwise, you'll end up like Sneako, I guess. Anyway, consider dropping a like if you enjoyed this segment. Every thumbs up goes a long way, no matter when, where, or what you're watching. It really does help. And of course, consider supporting the channel by subscribing, ringing the bell icon, and commenting down below. It also helps. Follow my social medias, linked down below in the description, including joining my fan Discord, which is totally free to join. And I also host events there as well. I host watch parties, gaming events, and call-in streams, and I announce all my new uploads and streams there as well. So if you don't want to miss anything, make sure to join. It's a really fun place to hang out, I think, so I hope to see you there. On top of that, consider supporting me financially if you've got the money for it and you feel like doing so by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buying merch to the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless, even if you're just sitting here watching and lurking, not even saying anything in the chat, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and have a good one.